If you work with your hands, be it a musician, a jeweler, or just sitting at your laptop working away for most of the day, you may run into some issues with your wrists and your hands. I'm here today to help show you some things that you can do to help get yourself ready for your workday ahead, to have less aches and pains when it comes to your fingers and your wrists. Hi everyone, Melanie here. I'm a yoga and movement professional. I love to help people move better, feel better, and do life better. I'm here today at my lovely friend Lucy of Lucy Walker Jewelry's studio, and I will be utilizing some of the tools at her workbench and some things that you could do to help to stretch and strengthen into your hands and your wrists today. So come follow along. Let's jump into our first movement with some finger rotations. What I'd like you to find is something that you can grip onto. It could be a ball, or I've found I think this is called a blower in the studio here. So I'm just going to give it a nice tight grip. And then we can lean down onto the counter here just to show you a little bit better. We're going to do some finger rotations. So we're going to start with our thumb, and then you're going to grip tightly onto your ball, and then you're going to go into a little circle with your thumb. You can do a few rounds one direction, and then do a few rounds the other direction. And then you'll move on to your pointer finger. So squeezing the ball and then doing a few circles one direction, and then circling the other way. And then moving on to the middle finger. So you can flip your bird, and then circling around, and then circling back the other way. So you're still keeping a nice, tight, firm grip onto the object that you're holding. And then the ring finger. Ring finger is quite a bit challenging, so just do as best as you can. I can't do a whole lot there. And then circling around the other way. And then doing the pinky finger, circling one direction, and then circling around the other way. Let's switch over to the other hand. So again, we're going to grip tightly onto your object. We're going to start with a thumb. So you're keeping that base knuckle squeezing into the object, and then circling around the other way. And then pointer finger. Circles one direction, and then circling it the other way. So as you can see, I'm keeping a really good kind of squeeze, almost a little bit kind of white knuckles, not killing it, but you're definitely giving it enough squeeze that it's not loose and lax. And then your ring finger, again, pretty pathetic on this one. And then the other way, and then to the pinky, one direction, and circling it the other way. Good. So this is a finger, your digits rotation, or sometimes called a controlled articular rotation for your fingers. Next, we're going to do a wrist rotation. We're going to hold on to the same object. We're going to lean down onto the counter, using your opposite hand to grab onto the opposite forearm. Now, the key point here is that I want your wrist pointing up towards the ceiling the whole time. So you're not going to let your wrist dump down, and you're not going to let it move back and forth, because when that moves, it's more elbow movement. So we're going to block it out by using your hand to squeeze. Just keep laser eyes onto your wrist, and then you're going to do small little circles around one direction. Again, you can kind of squeeze onto the object in your hand. So just making as big as circles as you can without that wrist dumping or moving down. Okay, so if you were doing it incorrectly, it would look like this. You'd be rolling it down. Okay, so slow, controlled circles, one direction, and then the other way. Now, we do the first one a little bit more horizontal, and then the next one we can do with the elbow bent up closer to our shoulder. You can be standing, you can be leaning onto a counter again. Looking at your wrist, a little bit harder because your wrist might be a little bit closer towards you, and then you're going to do some slow circles around one direction, and then those slow circles around the other way. You might get a lot of clicking and cracking, and that's totally normal. Let's switch to the other side. So coming back, we're going to bend down, grabbing the opposite hand onto the wrist, gripping onto your object, watching your wrist, and then we're just going to do slow circles around one direction. and then slow circles around the other way. Great. And then we're going to bend it up closer to our shoulder again, grab onto your forearm, and then we're going to do those slow circles, trying to make it as big of a circle as possible, and then circling it around the other way. Great. That's your wrist rotations to get your wrists nice and warm as well. The next movement we're going to do is some simple wrist stretches and then a wrist curl through, which is a personal favorite of mine. So we're going to start by just taking one hand, flipping the fingers down towards the floor, grabbing onto those fingers and then pulling the fingers back. The key things here is to keep your arms straight and that you're not shrugging your shoulder up to your ear, but that you're keeping your shoulder down as you pull your fingers back towards you. And then you can switch and then do it to the other side. Shoulder down, arm is straight, don't bend your elbow, and then you pull those fingers back towards you. Hold this, getting a nice stretch into the top of the wrist here. And then you can switch the other way. So you flip your fingers, palms up, fingers up towards the ceiling, grab on and pull back. You're getting a nice stretch onto the underside of the wrist and you're keeping your elbow straight, your shoulders down. And then switch to the other side, pulling those fingers back, arm is straight, shoulders down. Good. And then release, and you can just shake that out. Now, the next one, my favorite, it's a wrist curl through. So we're going to use kind of our arms and our fingers. So you're going to start with your palms facing up towards the ceiling, and then you can really bend your wrist and extend your fingers down towards the floor. So we'll start from there, and then you're going to curl just your fingertips, and then the knuckles, and then you're going to curl your hands into a ball, and then you're going to flex and bend at the wrist. So you're squeezing your wrists and your fingers back towards you. And then you're going to squeeze and hold that really tight. Then we're going to take the hands, keeping them curled under, taking them back under the arms, reaching them behind you. And as you reach behind you, you're flexing, you're still squeezing your hands up towards your shoulders from the back. And then from there, we're going to slowly come back under through the arms, elbows into your sides, and then you're going to bend the wrists, and then you're going to slowly extend the fingers, and then you're going to really stretch those fingers all the way down towards the floor and really bending at the wrist. So you're squeezing and getting this nice flexion here in the wrist joint. Let's do it one more time. So you're going to start to curl the fingers up and in, and then the knuckles, and then you're going to squeeze, bend the wrists, squeeze them back towards you as much as you can. Really feel a stretch on the top of the wrists here. And then you're going to start to curl them in, open the elbows out, take the hands down behind you, and then pressing straight back. So you don't want to have your wrists straight here, but you're really pulling those wrists up and flexing them as hard as you can. And then we're going to come back, bend the elbows out to your sides, bringing them back through and under your armpits. Elbows into the sides, keeping them squeezed, and then you bend the wrist, and then you undo your fist, slowly extending your fingers out, and then really extend. I like to say like Spider-Man webs. You're trying to press down and out, so we're jazz hands as you reach your fingertips down. Okay, and then release, shake them out. Now that you've warmed everything up, let's get to a little bit more strength. So I found a rather heavy hammer in the studio here. So find something heavy. You could also use a light kettlebell if you hold on to and put the bell up. But find anything kind of heavy with a long lever that you can hang on to. So again, I'm going to come down onto the bench here just to be able to focus this movement again into the wrist. This time my wrist is going to be pointing over to the side. So I can hang on to my forearm again if you like to. And then we're just going to take this hammer and we're going to do circles around. So you do have to be careful that you don't smack yourself in the face with the hammer. And then we're just going to do some nice slow circles around with control. So making sure that we're not moving our elbow, which is why we have it on the bench, and then we're grabbing onto our forearm. So we're making sure that wrist is staying pointing to the other side. Do a circle in one direction, and then you can do a circle in the other way. So now it's kind of a wrist rotation, but we're adding that weight to it. So we're making it a little bit more challenging. Okay, one direction, and then switch. Switching it over to the other hand. Again, I'm gonna grab onto my forearm. I'm gonna take it far enough away so I don't smack myself in the face. I'm keeping my elbow where it is, and I'm just rotating from my wrist. Do circles one direction, and we're trying to get as big a circles as you can, because you'll see that some areas are a little bit sticky. You can switch direction now. So it makes it a little bit more challenging, and then you want to cheat and you want to move from your elbow more than just the wrist. Okay, circling around the other way. All right. The next movement, we're going to use the heavy hammer again, or whatever heavy object, kettlebell, even a dumbbell could work well for you if you have this at home. And then we're going to bring the arm just up so that our elbow is in line with our shoulder in like a 90 degrees. And we're just going to hold the object over your head. So you want to grab it down at the lower part of it if you can, so that the more of the weight is up at the top, so it makes it a little bit more unstable, and then you have to kind of work on that stability. So you can just hold this in place and just working on that good forearm strength, or you could go for a walk with it as well. So you could kind of walk back and forth, moving around with that object as you like, and then switching to the other side. So putting the weight or the hammer into your other hand, bring that arm into that nice 90-degree angle, and then we're just holding it low. So you can start with not too heavy, and then you can also get a lot heavier. So the more heavier it is, obviously, the more challenging it'll be. And then you can also go for a little walk with this as well. Good. And then release. The next strength movement is something similar to a farmer's carry. So again, we want to find something heavy. So if you have a dumbbell, if you have a kettlebell, if you have a can of beans, anything that we can grip onto, because this is a lot about grip strength. I found a really heavy, actually, engraver. This is a decent sized one. So just gripping onto it, I'm already working a lot on that grip strength into my forearm and my wrists. But what we can do with this is that we can just hold it into one hand, and then we just can stand and hold this. Or you can again go for a little walk back and forth with it as well. It's a little bit more about time under tension. So you can play with turning the hand forward, you could turn the hand back, you can turn it facing towards your leg. So you can play with a lot of kind of different directions with this as you hold it. And again, it's about that grip strength. So working into the fingers or working into the wrists. Okay, and then switch sides. So you can put it into the other hand. Same thing, give it a nice tight grip, holding onto it. Again, I'm turning my fingers forward. You can turn them towards your leg, you can turn them back. You could do kind of a little variation of that depending on what you're holding and the ability to move it. You can go for a walk. Back and forth. Good. And then if you can, over time, you'll just slowly build this up and then keep increasing the weight so that you're getting more of that work into those wrists and the forearms with more load. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed these simple but effective moves that you can do to warm up, stretch, and strengthen into your wrists and your arms. This list is a short list, but not exhaustive. There are plenty of other things that you can do, but these are some simple things that you could start to add into your routine.